Dear colleagues from ENIEDA Network are part of the project, and they're going to present us now with some of the results. It is my great pleasure to present our next speakers, our next, the three next panelists. Our dear colleagues from University of Lodz and University of Opole, Julita Wozniak, Monika Kopytowska, and Lukasz Grabowski are going to talk about intolerance, or speech intolerance or hate speech in the context of online discourses. The proper title is Crisis of Multiculturalism and Ethnic Intolerance in Online Discourses. I would really like to draw your attention to this project. Obviously, we will hear a lot more, but this is one of the really big, let's say, events happening at the moment. Without further ado, I'll give the floor to you guys. Yes?
Thank you for the great introduction. My role here is to make a short introduction to the main subject of our presentation, which are online discourses from the perspective of the crisis of multiculturalism and ethnic intolerance. And that's why we present you some examples of this kind of discourses, which in fact examples of discourse of intolerance or discourse of hatred. We'll also say a few words about this project itself, and also we make a bit broader social context. We'll say in a few words some facts strictly connected with the crisis of multiculturalism as a social problem. So ethnic intolerance can be explained just for the need of our presentation as an unwillingness to accept the beliefs or behavior of someone who represents a different culture or origin. And of course, the word of intolerance or tolerance is very problematic as such. However, we are not going to come into details. Because we only want to make a general idea of the problem. And there are different theories concerning multiple origins for ethnic intolerance, different theories connected with deeply rooted unsolved problems, the lack of history of cooperation, and so on and so forth. And in terms of crisis of multiculturalism, we have to mention the most important facts. I have to skip a few slides because we have not much time. In terms of the causes of ethnic intolerance, some of the most interesting theories are concepts of resurgence hypothesis and salience hypothesis. Researchers favor the second hypothesis, which says that one of the causes of the ethnic tensions of inter-ethnic problems may be competition and conflict for scarce resources. It may be interesting in terms of thinking what kind of systemic solution can be implemented to avoid this kind of problems. And a few words about the consequences of ethnic intolerance. The most serious problems are parallel societies. This is a very important concept introduced into the discussion on migration and integration by Heitmeyer. And it says about the minority groups that don't tend to integrate into the main society, major society. And in consequence, the representatives of these groups sort of function on the margin of the society, because if they don't want to integrate or they don't have proper systemic solutions to integrate, they can't learn how to function properly among the representatives of the mainstream society. They can't learn proper behavior patterns. So, in consequence, lots of negative statements concerning the representatives of these groups start to appear or circulate in the society, and if something circulates in the society, it's also visible on the internet. As an example of this kind of multicultural policy that proved to be not fully successful, we can mention example of the UK and the theory of ethnic community model, according to which the model allowed the minority groups to preserve their own origin cultures. However, the same model doesn't encourage them to integrate smoothly into the main society. That's why, in consequence, there appeared something that is called in subject literature as ethno-separatism. And it is perceived as one of the major threats to the effective integration as such. And the great question that we probably left open, because it's a very complex question, how to reconstruct a multicultural society. And there are a number of possible measures that should be undertaken to build a truly multicultural society in which minority groups integrate into the main society, and at the same time they integrate with each other. So one of such a complex solution, as we believe, is the project that we are involved in, and the project is connected with a lot of tasks. Thanks to it, it's possible to organize different intercultural trainings on hate speech, doing extensive research, and this is something which I think shows that the problem of ethnic intolerance, the crisis of interculturalism, and the problem of hate speech are strictly connected with each other. These are issues closely interlinked, and this is the moment when I would like to give the floor to my colleague, who is going to say something more about the project itself.
Yes, as it has already been said, what we are presenting here and what we will also discuss tomorrow, because there is a special panel co-organized or organized within the framework of our project, is the EU project conducted by 10 countries, including Cyprus, Denmark. Cyprus actually is the coordinator of the project. Professor Fabienne Beider is with us. She's not here now. Then we have Denmark, Greece, Italy, Lithuania, Malta, Poland, Romania, Spain, and the UK. The name CONTACT stands for Creating an Online Network Monitoring Team and Phone Application to Counter Hate Crime Tactics. Basically, the idea of the problem is to do something about hate speech through raising public awareness of the problem, and through actually concentrating on the following key aspects or key problems. That is, identifying, monitoring the media and identifying examples of hate speech. Hence, as Julita said, we are interested in online hate speech because its cyberspace turns out to be, and I will be talking about it, we will be talking about it tomorrow, a perfect environment which is conducive to the spread of hate speech. So monitoring the media, identifying examples of hate speech, but also examining public perception of online hate speech, and this is what Lukasz is going to talk about in a while. The questionnaire that we conducted within our project And then, as a result, somehow raising public awareness of the problem and its consequences, and also encouraging the public to report cases of hate speech. As Julita mentioned, we also organize within the project, and we'll be talking about it tomorrow, workshops for various groups, including police and law enforcement authorities, secondary school students and university students, teachers, and also media representatives. So this sort of monitoring and identification then leads to and research concerning public perception of hate speech, then it's transformed into very practical activities meant to raise public awareness. Just a few words concerning the motivations. Why do people use hate speech? And then we can talk about several groups that resort to hate speech. Group one, which believes that the members of the group believe that they are superior. So it's the belief in the superiority of one social group over another, and that's something that's socially justified. Then another group are internet users who want to reconstruct their identity somehow, depending on the context in which they express their opinion. So they actually they feel empowered and they feel free of social restrictions. Then we also have the third group, that is people who are paid for posting hate messages to eliminate competition or discredit political opposition. And then also people who enjoy making hateful statements. So it's like I hate because I like it. Then a study conducted on hateful comment in Slovenia mentions two categories of speakers using hate speech. That is soldiers, people who belong to certain political parties or non-governmental organizations and who use the internet to disseminate stereotypes and damage the reputation of their opponents. But then also the other group, watchdogs, so people who use hate speech to draw attention to what they believe are social problems. And actually, these soldiers, people who belong to this soldiers group, say that internet is the tool that they have. It's something that empowers them, because otherwise, if it was not for the cyberspace, their voice would not be, the message would not be heard. Then consequences for individuals who use hate speech. So they develop, research shows that they develop negative attitudes towards minorities whose representatives they offend. It also leads to desensitization. It's like in the research shows that the effects are similar to what happens when people play video games, violent video games. It also leads to desensitization. And then it also may lead potentially to hate crime, that is aggressive attitudes towards groups which are victims of hate speech. Then consequences for individuals who are victims of hate speech. They experience social problems such as discrimination. They suffer from mental problems. Research shows that they are more likely to suffer from depression, and also there is higher risk of them committing suicide. And then teenagers who had regular contact with online hate speech had a tendency to depression and anxiety states. And I think now I will give the floor to Lukasz, who will tell you about part of our project.
Okay, thank you, Monika. And just very briefly, actually, because I know that we are running out of time, in our research, actually in the empirical part of our research, We used corpus methods to actually explore discourse representation of immigrants and refugees in Polish press. We will talk about this tomorrow afternoon, so you are more than welcome. We hereby invite you actually to this presentation. But today I will just briefly tell you about the results of a questionnaire study which was targeted at exploration of the perception of hate speech. This survey was actually administered to young people from Poland aged 18-35. Most of them were university students from the University of Lodz and from the University of Opole, BA students of English. The questionnaire was designed actually by Sharon Miller and Cesar Arroyo, who are also members of the contact team, and it was administered in November-December. More precisely, the questionnaire consisted of 7 Likert scale, categorical and open questions. So categorical questions, these were yes or no questions, and also there were actually open questions. Very often one type of question was supplemented with another. So in the very beginning what we did, Monika actually extracted a number of comments on YouTube which were found actually under films related to refugees and immigrants. So actually the participants were actually asked how acceptable in their view these comments actually are. The first one actually, which is probably the most extreme because it's riddled with vulgar language. In this particular case, as you can read it, I wouldn't read it out. We have references actually which are very dehumanizing, so to say. 89% of participants actually replied that this type of comment is not acceptable, although 1.8 claimed that it is acceptable. It's important actually to add at this point that all in all we had 500 participants who actually filled in this questionnaire. The second comment, which refers to no place for refugees in our society, surprisingly, well, not surprisingly, 31.5% claim that this is rather unacceptable, and 31% that it is not acceptable. But as you can see, also the number of those participants who claim that this type of comment is acceptable is quite high. The next comment, which refers to the fact that we should help refugees, that it is our duty, that we owe them cordiality and respect. The majority actually claim that this type of comment is acceptable or somewhat acceptable. So we can see actually that in this particular case, the help targeted as refugees was actually found to be acceptable.
Although it's interesting, if you look at it, that it doesn't make any difference whether it's Christian, Muslim, Buddhist,
yes,
or whether it's a human or a cow or a hen.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's somehow putting, I think, all this on the
equal footing. Yes. And then we actually asked the participants what would they think? Would it make any difference to their assessment for what is acceptable or not if these comments had been written in private contexts online? Because these comments were actually produced in public context, so they were publicly available. And 29% of the respondents, they said that yes, if these had been written in private context, like private emails, private chat, private Facebook pages, then it would make a difference regarding their assessment. And then, out of those 29%, 61% of those who answered yes, they claimed that private context would render the comments more acceptable. In other words, the stronger the comment in private context, the acceptability actually would be higher. Then we asked actually the question concerning whether the respondents witnessed anyone being a target of insults or threats on various grounds, so on the grounds of nationality, skin color, ethnic origin, religion, gender, or sexual orientation. And here we have actually found out that as regards, for example, ethnic origin, 21% of our respondents, they claim that they witnessed actually aggression target, that actually someone was actually a target of insults or threats. 32% actually argued that yes, yeah, but rarely. So we can see that it is a serious social problem. And then we have capitalized on this, and in the following question, we asked participants something as follows: if you witness someone being insulted or threatened on various grounds, including ethnic origin, would you report this? And we were quite surprised, to be perfectly candid, that 51% said they don't know, and 19.3% they said no. And we were just curious, actually, what is the rationale behind this? So we actually asked this question to those who said no, they wouldn't report it, or they don't know. We have asked actually why? What is actually the reason why you wouldn't report or you don't know, right? And the answers which they provided, this was an open-ended question actually. So 67% of those respondents, they claimed that, well, I don't think that the police or authorities would do anything about it. So there is no actually trust in public authorities or law enforcement institutions. Then 33%, they wouldn't know how to report it. So you don't know the procedure. Where? Whom to contact? How to do that? It would be too much trouble to report it. 31%. 23%, I would be worried about reprisals. So this is an argument actually which refers to something completely different, right? I would feel ashamed, embarrassed, or uncomfortable, 22% actually. So maybe it may concern to this tradition, tipping off the authorities, spying on someone, which is actually variously perceived across cultures. 21%, I don't think it is. I think it's not my problem. 14%, I do not think it is serious enough to report it. So it is not actually seen as a social problem. And finally, 9.6%, the incident is too common an occurrence to report it. So actually, well, it's routine. So we shouldn't actually worry about it.
Okay, and then if I can get 2 minutes, we were also interested in how they understand hate speech. So we asked them whether they have heard of the notion of hate speech, and as you can see, the majority said yes. But then what we did, we provided 4 definitions of hate speech, starting with the one saying that hate speech means making negative, prejudiced remarks about people. So it's just about, making negative, prejudiced remarks. And then you can see that only, 33 people said they strongly agree, 36 agree. Then the second definition went further, saying that hate speech means insulting someone. So we moved to insults because of their race, nationality, or ethnic origin, or religion, or sexual orientation. And we can see that the number of people who consider it to be hate speech is higher. Then we move from insults to threats. So hate speech means threatening someone because of their race or nationality or ethnic origin, and here the number is quite comparable. And finally, hate speech means encouraging other people to be violent. So it's about incitement to violence. And then we asked them whether they believe there should be laws against different types of hate speech. So as you can see from the table, it's threatening someone and then incitement to violence that most people think should be punished. Whereas, well, if you look at the first definition, well, okay, it's still 71%, but the number is not as high as in the other cases. And conclusions, the crisis of multiculturalism that Julita was talking about may be perceived as both the cause and the consequence of spread of radical discourses and hate speech online. What we need are, on the one hand, effective policies and legal instruments, and this is what we also try to compare, or we've been trying to compare within the project, to look at legal instruments, regulations concerning hate speech in these 10 EU countries. But these should be complemented with raising awareness, raising workshops and educational activities, which we also try to do within the project. And something that's ENIEDA is very much involved in, the that we believe in, is this transdisciplinary dialogue that is key to both identification and prevention of ethnic intolerance. Its causes, but then also its consequences, also in the form of hate speech. Thank you. Yes, and we would like, if you want to read about some of the results of our project, the chapter about it will be published in an edited volume, Discourses of Hate and Radicalism Across Space and Genres, which is actually a very interesting edited collection with chapters by Andreas Musolf, Ruth Wodak, Paul Baker, and others, and ours.
So
thank you very much.
thank you.